Back when I first started Intelligame, well, no, not when I first started. Early on in early on in Intelligame's history, I used to do this thing in Intelligame Radio. It was a podcast where I would try and do this sort of like 10-minute mini show. It was supposed to drop daily and give people some sort of touch point to whatever it was I was doing for Intelligame. I have been trying to figure out how to lower the barrier to me creating something that I actually publish, that I actually give out to the world. But I also am really intimidated by the idea of like trying to publish a video to YouTube or something daily. So I'm trying to come up with this compromise, something that feels like it's accessible, like I'll actually do it, like I'll actually push the publish button and send it, but also something that does still speak to what I think is important in terms of Intelligame content. Connect games in the world around us and also speak to the needs and the matters of the moment. I've been struggling a lot trying to figure out how to do both of those things because it feels like there are so many issues of the current moment to speak to. But I also recognize that part of how we build resilience is to still love the things that we love, to still put energy into the things that we care about, and to not let the impending bull beep like push us away from who we are, what we make at our core, the art that we love and that we experience and share with each other. So this is an experiment that I hope I will publish at the end of the week. I think I'm gonna call this, I don't know, maybe Intelligame Weekly. I just want it to be a series of 10-minute, like 10-minute max per day of this is stuff that I was thinking about or games that I wanted to check out. Like just I want to make short things, but not publish them every day. Maybe just publish them once a week, and then you have up to 5, maybe even 7 days of little 10-minute videos that'll talk about a thing or have an idea. I'm already 3 minutes deep, so I need to keep moving. I think today I I think today I would want to talk about. See, already I'm hitting the block of like, do I talk about the game that I was playing that I thought was really interesting? Do I talk about Next Fest, Steam Next Fest, and all these demos that are coming out and the that thing? Do I talk about the games that are big on my backlog? Do I the indecision of it. Also, I probably should have I probably should have taken my meds, my ADHD meds before this. I think I am going to start easy. I'm going to talk about a game that I actually found on iOS called Lost in Swords, and it just kind of scratched an itch for me last night. It is a puzzly roguelike game where you are trying to get your character through a maze of enemies by moving your character around on this little map. You go and you pick up weapons. Each weapon has a limited number of uses, and you try to take out all of the enemies that are in the enemy deck before you get to the end of the floor. The first couple times I wasn't quite sure what was going on, but it turns out it's actually really smooth. I really like the accessibility. The art style is fun, but just the sort of light puzzliness and the ways that there are some combos that can scale up pretty cool. Slay the Spire has been the game that has been taking most of my existence lately because it is my go-to comfort food, but I also am trying to work my way out of that Slay the Spire rut. I was like, hey, I should play some games with story and narrative. And then I saw that I had downloaded this one random game on my iPad and was like, well, maybe I'll just give it a shot. and see what's going on. And 2.5 hours later, I really should have been asleep, but no, I was up playing Lost in Swords. I guess I was lost in swords. Lost in lost in swords. I Oh my god, I have to stop. I know that part of getting the work done is honing in. I had a really great conversation with Smolecule yesterday, who's a delightful friend and creator, and was talking about all of the ways that if the work doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. It is still really important for me to spend time playing the games that I know have the stories and the experiences that empower me and hopefully empower you too. But I also want to make space to recognize that spending time just playing things for the hell of it, or to just cool down to regain energy, that's okay too, in moderation. I'm trying not to just justify every time that I procrastinate with, hey, you're low on spoons, hey, you had a rough day, hey, the world is falling apart. Because there does have to be some point where the rubber meets the road. We don't get stronger if we don't work the muscles, and we don't work the muscles if we don't go to the metaphorical gym, or for some folks the actual gym. It's been a long time since I've been in a gym. Something about like touching a bunch of things that other people have like touched and coughed on. I'm still, I recognize that part of the struggle that I have is the shame that I feel around the time that I'm spending doing the thing that isn't the thing. And then even once I start doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing, I get stuck in indecision of whether or not it's the right thing to do, whether or not I am wasting my time. And I think a lot of us are thinking about that when it comes to the world in general right now. Should I be trying to find and particularly here in the States, should I be trying to find an exit plan? Should I be trying to dig down and make a network with my community? Should I be, what should I? And I think that perhaps more ability, more confidence, more result comes from, instead of saying should I X, say I am this. I am playing this game. I am lost in swords. And it's okay right now, but I can't do this forever. I am also interested in making the content that's close to my heart, spending time with the games that hopefully will help me connect to y'all in different and interesting ways. And I am going to find ways to spend more time focusing on that. Even though I did still play quite a few floors of Lost in Swords today, and I will probably still play a couple more before the end of the day. That's what I got for today. And we're right under the 10-minute cap, so I'm going to cut this off. I'll see you tomorrow. Increasingly on the internet, it feels like all of the places where we spend time are monetized. They are vehicles for selling a thing, and I'm supposed to be selling that thing so that I can get a fraction of a penny for the commercial that you watch about uh, uh, Factor meals or something. That, wow, 10 minutes flew by today. Beep. Um, am I gonna try this again? Because I feel like I just got a point and then I didn't. Okay, let's try it again. I am trying to stick to my like 10 minutes a day cap. So now that I've found my point, let me try to talk about it. One of the things that is difficult for me in conceptualizing this format is trying to figure out whether or not it works on YouTube. I read an email this morning from Louise Stiegel. She's a creator that I actually found here on YouTube through a random YouTube algorithm suggested video about trying to spread your work online without using social media. This particular newsletter is called Why Substack, and it's about why she has returned again to using Substack as this platform for her blog and newsletter. Part of what she goes into is the idea of the medium being the message. That when she was like, well, let me try and create these videos and cross post them between these two platforms, she was like, well, I'm still making videos that are curated for YouTube, which means that when I share them with people who are my newsletter subscribers, it may feel more impersonal. The things that she writes in her blog may feel like more personal. They create more space for conversation. And those two things don't necessarily line up, which is part of the reason I guess I feel concerned about doing this. Of course, the first thing that I do whenever I try a thing is doubt whether or not I am doing the thing and whether it makes any sense and why did I. But okay, take a deep breath. Part of what intimidates me about making this kind of content, about essentially vlogging, about trying to each day just share a piece of my life or my experience or an idea, as opposed to saying, here's my review for this game. Here's my review for this game. Here's my take on this news thing. And don't get me wrong, those things might happen, but it's not the intention of this. And I think part of my concern is that it just doesn't feel like the internet is shaped for personal experiences, right? Because how do you sell just listening to a person if that person is not selling a product? How much of game criticism, game journalism is powered by reviews? And on one hand, a review is a personal perspective about about a game, about an experience, about time spent, whatever, right? And that's important. But we have this idea that the review is supposed to be objective to an extent. Like we've created this space where the personal experience is not necessarily what's being shared. It's the evaluation of the personal experience and whether or not it's an experience you should take on as well. If I play Citizen Sleeper and I talk about Citizen Sleeper, it feels like I'm not talking about it. It feels like I'm talking about it to sell you a copy of Citizen Sleeper. The company gives me a copy of a game so that I talk about a game so that you are excited about my experience about the game and go buy the game. And that's obviously how people keep their jobs and get to make more games. So I don't necessarily inherently knock that concept. But I also feel like there is this entire conceptualization then of how we think about sharing our stories that is really frequently packaged in this language and this environment that is made for sales. A chief example, how do you find this on YouTube? Like what the thing that I'm talking about, I have to consider what's my SEO? What's my title? If I package these essays together in this bundle format, this little Intelligame Weekly, whatever, how do you search for it? The things that might help people find this content, this content, even just me calling it content, that might help you find this video. I have to think about SEO and search tags and And how frustrated are people going to be if I call out, oh, well, I tag it with Citizen Sleeper 2, but I don't talk about Citizen Sleeper 2 until 30 minutes into the video. And how do I come up with a title that's like compelling and clickbaity enough to make you click it? I don't actually know the answers to most of those questions. It's why I don't make a lot of content for YouTube. And I realize that learning some of that is part of how you build your presence as a creator, how you get people to listen to your stories, how you get people to find your stories. But what I've always wanted, and the reason why I created Intelligame, is because I want people to feel like sharing their stories is an important part of being a human, regardless of whether or not you're an influencer, a content creator, whether or not you are trying to become a professional reviewer or whatever. My hope has always been that this Intelligame style of discussion, that the concept of taking not just whether or not we enjoy the game, but the diving into the why, the connections we make with the individual stories, the stories from our lives that connect to the things in the games, and we share these experiences not because it's an opportunity to sell you a copy of a game, but because it's an opportunity to share a part of me with you. To me, that's what powers genuine connection, growth, care for each other, care for ourselves, recognition of ourselves in the other that perhaps we were afraid of before. Maybe we can be a little less afraid now. Maybe we can build a little more together. And I don't know how you sell that on YouTube, but I don't want to perpetually sell things. That was not my goal. And so I'm trying this anyway. And sometimes I'll talk about games, and sometimes I'll talk about I mean, there'll be some connection. That's the idea. It's still Intelligame stuff. But I think about what it means to truly look at the walls around us, the platforms that we share through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon. All of these platforms have a vested interest in us doing a thing that they can package up and identify and quantify and sell. And I don't want to be sold. But here I am, selling. But I am trying for not selling, but storytelling. I guess we'll see if it works. Even the idea of works. Okay, I'm over 10 minutes. For another video. I think these 10-minute recordings, light, easy things, are going to become more complicated. I did another recording where I talked about the idea of voting with your dollars, because tomorrow, or today, as of when you see this, there is a national no purchase movement boycott thing going on here in the States that a number of people have talked about. And I have some complicated feelings about the idea of a one-day no purchase protest, not because I am opposed to protest, but because I think that creating the kind of change that we want to see at a systemic level will take more than a single day of not buying stuff, particularly if you buy a bunch of stuff the day before in preparation for not buying things that day. This isn't to say that you shouldn't do the thing, but is instead to say, like, do the thing and more. That's the kind of work that is going to be necessary to be able to affect change in these systems with our finances, particularly when an increasingly large share of finances overall are possessed by a smaller and smaller number of people who generally seem to not be that interested in change in the social order. But all of those things said, part of the reason why this gets more complicated is because talking about this reminded me of a clip of a speech that I saw from Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, organizer of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and what became the Black Panther Party. And he was talking about the difference between what he called mobilization and organization, with the idea being that revolutionaries are focused on organization, not mobilization.
We say that we must come to know the difference between mobilization and organization because the enemy will use mobilization to demobilize us. Mobilization is very easy, very, very easy. Because since we're people who are instinctively ready to respond against acts of injustice, anytime there's one little act of injustice, we can blow it up and we'll find people who come and make some mass demonstration around it. Miss Sally lost her job. Let's rally. She'll get her job back. People will come and rally. So-and-so got kicked out of school because the teacher's unjust. The people will come and rally. They will come to rally at issues. And this is what mobilization does. It mobilizes people around issues. Those of us who are revolutionary are not concerned with issues. We're concerned with the system. The difference must be properly understood. The difference must be properly understood. Mobilization usually leads for reform action, not to revolutionary action. If we would look scientifically at the October 16th million and more march, we would see clearly that this was a mobilized event, not an organized event. We must know clearly the difference between mobilization and organization. One of the characteristics of mobilization is that it is temporary. Organization is permanent and eternal. Clear differences must be made because the unconscious can usually be captured easily around one-issue items, around mobilization items, but it's hard to catch them around organization. But these unconscious must be brought to organization. We must transform mobilization to organization. We say the enemy will come and use mobilization to demobilize us. Many brothers and sisters who've been to the million and more march will say to you, I was there. Well, what are you doing today, my sister? I was there. There weren't too many sisters out there, but you know, with a million brothers together, you know where I had to be. I was there. Yes. And then, of course, you find brothers, yeah, I was there. I helped you. What are you doing today, brother? If we're not careful, we allow mobilization to become events. The struggle is never an event. It's a process, a continual, eternal process. We say it is our job to use mobilization to drive us to organization. You know our theme is organization. We want power. We don't want money. We don't want fame. We don't want fortune. We don't want popularity. We want power. Power. And power comes only from the organized masses.
That mobilization is an opportunity to bring together a bunch of people to react to a situation. But essentially, mobilization shows up and then it leaves. Organization creates infrastructure. He actually, in this clip, as I was looking for I was trying to find the full speech, and I finally found the full hour-long talk, which I'll watch and talk about later. And I'll link it in the however I put together notes for these things. He actually kind of calls out MLK, who he did work with for a little while. But he calls out MLK as being a really good mobilizer, but not a particularly good organizer. Where he says Malcolm X was a good mobilizer, but also a good organizer. That there were mosques and other infrastructure that was left where Malcolm X was taking action. MLK was good at creating these large mass scale mobilizations, but did that create the space for revolutionary change, or did it instead create space for incrementalism? And I'm still churning around in my head a little bit of my thoughts on that, because I don't necessarily feel like it's an instead, but I also recognize that as somebody who has not been doing the work for as long as Kwame Ture was, my opinion is one that needs more research and more experience. But I do think that there is something tangible to this idea of thinking about organization. What are the things that we need to be able to create lasting, substantial change? And I was going to say to appease the Intelligame, whatever. I recognize that these are conversations that we're comfortable having here. This is what Intelligame does, right? We make connections between games and the real world. And so I think it's really important to take this concept and apply it to games. And I maybe it seems like a weird segue, but it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. There are so many, this idea of a one day don't buy anything protest. I'm not sure what the objective would be. What would create the change? I don't even technically know what's being asked for. But is Target going to roll back their revision on DEI policies because for one day people didn't shop at Target? Probably not. But if there is a sustained movement of people not shopping at Target, if those margins get smaller and smaller, if competitors are getting more and more opportunities, getting larger market share, perhaps that will create an impetus for change in Target. However, an article that I read on Quartz talks about how increasingly more and more of the American economy is powered by a smaller and smaller group of people. In fact, the article that let me pull it up so that I can use the correct numbers. Please don't tell me I closed it. I was just using it. There it is. The top 10% of earners are now responsible for almost half of all spending. So if only 10% of the people in America are controlling almost half of the country's spending, and they're powering this significant amount of the purchases that keep the wheels turning, if that 10% decides that they don't care about social change, then how are dollars going to make the difference? The whole infrastructure of vote with your dollars implies that those without dollars don't get votes. Hey, this is Edit Josh, and like we're gonna run that one back. I was cooking on that statement. In case you missed it, one more time, Josh. Tell it for the people in the back. The whole infrastructure of vote with your dollars implies that those without dollars don't get votes. And that isn't okay. Damn right it's not. We can't, that like, as marginalized folks, as people who oftentimes don't have as many dollars, we are setting ourselves up to participate in a system in which the people who are doing us harm have more votes. And then we're just supposed to respect that? It's the whole fundamental problem with go woke, go broke. It's not just the false correlation that comes between trying to do work for social justice and then a project not doing financially well. Like the connection that they're not talking about is that more and more the people who have the money to determine whether or not a thing is successful, whether the money to provide the press motivations, the money to provide better resources on set or publicity or whatever, any of those connections, the connecting tissue, the people who have that money are not the marginalized folks. And it also does not make space for the idea that there are plenty of things that are not woke that also go broke because they are bad or because they are uninteresting or whatever. But when we let go woke, go broke be the guiding terminology of the discussion, we have accepted a proposition that 90 times out of 100, regardless of quality, does result in a type of failure or loss for our movement, because we are accepting the idea that success in capitalism represents good. Yo, I'm sorry. I snapped off on this one. Like I just I feel like this is Edit Josh, and I feel like you might have missed that piece. So just in case, we're running it back one more time. When we let go woke, go broke be the guiding terminology of the discussion, we have accepted a proposition that 90 times out of 100, regardless of quality, does result in a type of failure or loss for our movement, because we are accepting the idea that success in capitalism represents good. Success in capitalism represents a win. And fighting for social change, for justice, for equity is generally not going to be supported by a capitalism, particularly this capitalism that we live in now. Damn right it's not. But that said, our dollars, or whatever currency we have, does still represent a power. And so how do we use that? And I think about this in the game space because I watch all of these companies do these massive layoffs after they've created these games that people love, like Marvel Rivals or whatever. And you see the ways that the people who are part of this infrastructure are being discarded, and I want to do something about it, and people tell me to vote with my dollars. How? If I stop spending dollars on these games, then do those developers who I care about, is there now more justification for them to get laid off? Have I gone woke and broken the games that I care about? But if I buy all of these additional games that I'm treating them just as commodities, but I'm not spending time with them or building connection to them, then when those developers get laid off anyway because the folks don't care, what am, because the company has already now created the engine that makes them profit, so they don't need the developers anymore, so they just lay them off like Dragon Age. So yeah, I've got some research to do. Um, I don't have. I'm out of time, and I haven't figured this one out yet, but it's something we're going to be coming back to. Make smart choices today. All right, so it's Friday, the 28th. And yes, today is the spending blackout day. So if you're like, try not to spend money if you can. I think it's, well, you saw my post about from yesterday. So I hope that this is the beginning of a larger social consciousness and movement. And I think that participating today, if you're able, is a great way to show that solidarity and to take that first step into larger action, and also recognize that these small steps are valuable in themselves, which I think I didn't talk about as much yesterday, but even small actions, they help us move towards larger ones, but they also make a difference in that moment. Maybe today you aren't spending money going, you don't randomly hop on Amazon, and instead, if you have to get a thing, you go to a small business, or you figure out a way, oh, actually, I don't need this thing, I can go get this other thing. And I imagine many people are playing Monster Hunter Wilds today anyway, and you probably already pre-ordered it, so like your purchase stuff, you're probably done for the day anyway. But today is also the last day of Black History Month, which it would be easy to forget about if, well, any number of ways. I was going to mention that it would be easy to forget about if you maybe, I don't know, don't see it on your Google Calendar anymore. because Google went through and apparently removed a number of their sort of like marginalized group recognition signposts, Women's History Month, Asian American History Month, Black History Month. And this is part of the slow incremental process of shifting us back. This does seem to be a little bit in line of making America great again, if again had to be some point in America's past. And I think that the thing that strikes me personally is how little time or energy this month I put towards Black history consciously. Part of it is because so much of this month has been a tire fire on the national scale, and it feels like the battle of trying to summon the energy to creative anything is really tough. On top of that, I think the fracturing of social media networks and all of these different things means that it's harder, unless you are in a specific group that is building community around something like Black History Month, it might be harder to remember that is a thing to pay attention to, a place to put energy. That's why the month exists. It's because if we don't have these times that we specifically carve out to say, hey, we're going to remember this thing, it becomes really likely that we won't remember to do that thing. That we will be caught up in whatever the issue of the moment is, and that is important to take care of the issue of the moment. But I am increasingly recognizing that what makes a thing happen, what makes an important thing happen that isn't happening already, is focus. It's dedication. It's carving out the time. I did listen to what was a 1-hour talk that Kwame Ture gave about mobilization and organization. And I listened to some of James Baldwin's speech that he gave in a debate with William F. Buckley at, I believe it was Harvard. And the debate was on, the debate topic was the, agree or disagree with the statement, the American dream has come at the expense of the American Negro. And it felt, I can't imagine what it must have felt like to be James Baldwin, acclaimed author, poet, now this figurehead speaking for the rights and humanity of Black people in America. And to fly to England to sit in a room full of mainly white men and boys debating essentially whether or not the lived experience and the pain of not just yourself, but all of the people who look like you, the people whose lineage you're born from, the people whose lineage comes after yours, whether or not their pain, their sacrifice is something to be even recognized. And to be in this group of people, many of whom, again, this is taking place in England. So these are folks who have an opinion, but don't have agency. And there were a number of ways that during the introductions that people were talking, and there were a couple people who are, making sort of the warm-up comments. There were a couple debate students who gave their input on whether they were for or against the measure. And I will, to what seems like the credit of the guy who was tasked with debating the against the measure, who was not William F. Buckley, conservative so-and-so, and the founder of the National Review. He did try to, it felt like he was kind of weaseling his way out of the well, I wouldn't say that The American dream has come at the expense of the American Negro. I would say that the American dream has suffered because of the mistreatment of the. So it's not that the American dream is like great. It's that it could have been better if they hadn't been so damn terrible. But I can't imagine being James Baldwin sitting in this room full of people where it feels like they're debating my humanity. And that wasn't 100 years ago. It wasn't 200 years ago. It wasn't generations back. My parents were alive at the time this was happening. Conscious at the time this was happening. You know, there's some memories. I don't know that they remember specifically this. There's apparently a follow-up debate. Most people agree that Baldwin pretty well dusted Buckley in this. Apparently they had a second follow-up debate that was far less structured, and it was not long after MLK Jr. had been murdered. And the lack of structure apparently gave Buckley this opportunity to essentially just come in and troll and harass, and Baldwin seemed to not be prepared for that. So many people say that he lost to that debate. And the loss of that debate was one of apparently the great pains of Baldwin's memory. And it's real interesting how people want him to, let's be civilized, let's have a debate, because, black people don't have, we as white people, we're giving them civilization, we're teaching them. And you have to get down and accusatory and street brawl and remove the rules or whatever to be able to come out on top. Apparently, Buckley's position generally changed throughout the rest of his life to the point where he eventually admitted that federal intervention for segregation was necessary. Great. I talk about this as the last post of the week because it is the end of Black History Month. And it was a coincidence that I spent this time with Black history these past few days. Not in the sense that I don't care, but that in the process of just doing my work and thinking about the things I was thinking about, it led me to search these things. And I fear for what I would be thinking about or how my thought processes would be if I hadn't had those impulses to think about that. And I think about how many of us, without somebody pushing us in a particular direction, may not spend as much time thinking about the voices that are not dominant in our culture. The opinions, the thoughts, the ideas of women, of Asian Americans, and this is a conversation that I'm having in the context of America, but Asian Americans, indigenous folks, Latino people, Latina people. There is if America were to become great, I would venture the proposition that it would not be a great again. That perhaps this country and the people in it, for as many ways as we have fought and struggled and created opportunities for social progress, have perpetually lived in a state of contradiction, of a statement about the high-minded ideals and equality and morality that exists in this country and opportunity, and then the reality of who those opportunities are afforded to, and the people who do have to pay, not just in their money, but in their life, their lifespans, their literal lives, The opportunities available to them, to their children, to an entire generation, to multiple generations of people born into a situation. That cost has been paid, is being paid, will continue to be paid. And I would venture that a country that finds its greatness by standing on the shoulders of that sacrifice of the marginalized is not great, was not great. I do not deny the potential for greatness, but it doesn't come at beating others down. Greatness comes by lifting everyone up. And I guess we'll see what happens. I'm over time. And that's okay. Thanks for hanging out and letting me try this new thing with you this week. I really enjoyed doing this, so I hope I can find some ways to continue doing it in the future. If you want to help support that, please make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell and honestly tell a friend. Genuinely, just sharing this video with a friend would make a big difference. So thanks so much, everybody. See you next week. All right, so obviously you're watching this after Friday because I didn't end up posting it on time. This is my epilogue to last week's series for Intelligame Weekly, and I'm feeling a little complex about it, a little complicated. I'm still hoping to do it again this week. I did enjoy doing the short form videos, but when Friday showed up, I got into my head about whether or not it was a appropriate or responsible thing to do to post a video, knowing it was gonna, knowing that it could draw people to YouTube, and does that count as a, no purchase, no activity? It's very easy for me to get into my own head. There are so many things that I've recorded and never posted. And already I feel like I shouldn't post this because I'm like, oh, well, the content from last week is outdated. So what's the point, right? And maybe that's part of the problem too. This desire to make sort of evergreen content, because I hate the feeling of like watching a thing or you read an article and you're like, oh, well, it's from 2 weeks ago, and in 2025, 2 weeks ago was a lifetime ago, and maybe it won't feel relevant anymore. I think it's really easy for me to come up with reasons and excuses and all kinds of things to not post a thing. Spend a lot of time doing a thing and never share the thing. And I am not gonna pretend that I've got that mastered or figured out. I really don't. Friday came around and I also felt kind of miserable. My energy levels have been really up and down, and I think that's the case for everybody. I think it's really difficult to venture into new creative territory when you aren't feeling particularly confident about yourself or about the quality of your work or the opportunities in the future. Maybe that is why it's so important to do new things in times that are tough, or to be willing to strike out into those creative ventures. Or at least that's what I'm telling myself right now. Saturday, I was not in an ideal mood, I would say, but I ended up running into a couple of friends of mine, and I got to meet their just over 2-year-old daughter for the first time. And it was interesting having conversations with them about, what do we do in the current moment? How do we build community? How do we create resilience? And it is interesting seeing people's kids, I think, in particular. This idea of starting on a new journey for yourself, creating this new journey for a new life. And somehow, I imagine you have to have some kind of hope, some kind of focus to say that you're going to bring this life into a world that is worthwhile and exciting and gives them opportunities for finding love and happiness and growth, even amidst all of the world's problems and the number of ways that we've seen people take advantage of folks in moments of weakness, to exploit others, to focus on hatred and harm. And then you see this little kid running around showing you cool rocks that they found, and you remember that there's some life, there's some energy out there that is beyond all of the giant scale conflict of the current moment. And that unfortunately doesn't mean that conflict is not still there. There are not still things to do, because there certainly are. And a number of these situations will get worse before they get better. It's hard recording this epilogue right now because it's Monday and I read some news and I'm anxious about that news, and I am all kinds of ways. But I'm hoping that continuing to make things, to still have conversations about what is important, I hope that pushes us in the right direction. I hope that it makes more opportunities to have conversations about organization, about finding some strength, about making, I don't know. I kept looking for a word there, and it's tough. It's really tough. This is maybe one of the things that feels the most vulnerable about this daily format. Is like, what happens when I'm like, yo, I'm not feeling it, right? And because of this format, there's not necessarily going to be a video for every day of the week. That was why I did it. It's to give myself a little bit of grace and a little bit of space in that regard. But still, what does it mean to show up when it's hard? To be vulnerable when you don't technically have to, right? On stream, it's live, it's in real time. And here with a pre-recorded video, I could record and just decide to never post it. Made that decision a lot. And yet I understand the importance or the power of sharing the moments of vulnerability, of recognizing that just because you're not showing up with 100% doesn't mean that you don't show up. That sometimes bringing 50% of to the table and being honest about that, it gives other people the chance to maybe help fill in. Maybe you get to that 100% together. I left my friend's place the other day feeling really energized. The weather was gorgeous. There were all kinds of people outside working on different stuff. And I felt this renewed sense of hope that I don't think I would have felt just from the weather, but from sharing this time with good friends. I hope that doing these recordings will be a sharing of time that's beneficial to me. I'll be selfish, but also to certainly to y'all as people who are watching them. I don't know where they're going to go. I would like to talk about games, of course. And I'd also like to talk about some other things too. And we're just going to try and let it ride and see what happens. I need to let this stop so that I actually post this video. Thank you for watching. If you want to support, there are links down in the description. I'm going to do some update stuff for the next video, hopefully, so that we've got some credits for the folks who are helping to support over on Patreon or things like that. So, but I have to at least publish one. So please know if you're not there aren't any credits here, but it's not because I don't appreciate or don't care. I just know it's going to take me time to figure out how to do it, and that will be another blockade that I put between me and publishing this video. And the longer that it takes for me to publish this video, the less likely it is to get published. So out it goes. We'll talk to you soon, folks. Keep your eyes up. Keep your hearts open. Yeah.